So good morning, everybody. My name is Tommaso Buganza. I'm professor here at Politecnico, and what I would like to try to do I will try to be as fast as I can. I would like to introduce you to this idea that we had with Daniel that we called platform thinking. And in order to present this idea, I would like to bring you with us through the different steps we went through in order to get here. So we started, basically we are a research group which is focusing on innovation. Innovation from different points of view, different innovation in different industries and stuff like that. And at a certain point of our lives, we started to get in contact with platforms. Actually, that happened a lot of time before Daniel was probably even born. So the first platforms for people my age were more connected with product platforms. There is a super brilliant case of a Sony Walkman and stuff like that, and you build on it. And then there was another super case of Black & Decker and the engines, and so that was the beginning of it. So how you create a common part of a product, and then you derivate new products on top of them. And then it was the age of computers, and some of the things that also Carmelo Cennamo named at a certain point, this idea of industry platforms, how you create a platform for others to innovate on what you do. And I was really a nerd when I was a kid, and I spent a lot of time playing video games and stuff like that. So this idea of a platform and the console games was pretty much my DNA. And then what happened? At a certain point, we started to see that new companies which are somehow reshaping what we do, they use a sort of platform approach, but it's not exactly a product platform. It's not exactly an industry-wide platform. It is something different. And so we started to, given that that's our work, to work on innovation, we started to ask ourselves how it is possible to innovate a platform. So the starting point was we study innovation, we like platforms, let's put the two things together. And we came to understand that there are different typologies of platforms. At the beginning, it was not that clear. When we think about platforms, we always think about Airbnb or Uber. In some cases, we might think about Amazon or eBay, or basically, we are almost always thinking about cases of matchmaking. There is also a brilliant book about matchmaking. So you create a platform, so your work is just to internalize the value that you create by making people that want to have a transaction to meet each other. The interesting thing is that this is a typical idea of platform. So this is how we represent it. You got different players. You got two or more, let's say, two different sides at the beginning. You got the platform in the middle, and what you basically do is everything that Cennamo already told us. So if you increase the number of players on the one side, you're increasing the value for the other side. The interesting thing is that all of these new companies coming from the Silicon Valley, so Airbnb, Uber, and so on, they didn't invent actually anything. So basically, they are just creating, they are just using new technologies, so digital technologies, to do something that it is quite simple. So every market in the street since ever, so since the Middle East, markets at the beginning of a story, they actually do the same. They create a place in which you actually can go. You got somebody proposing something, somebody wanting to buy that thing, and if I want to buy an apple, it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to go to ask to all of the different apple producers. It's easier to have them all in the same place. What they do actually, instead of doing it on a physical level, they do it on a digital level, which means the world is huge, and which also means that you can somehow, maintain or capture a part of a value that you are creating by mixing them. So normally, when you run these markets in the streets, you don't have anybody taking part of a transaction. But for example, when you are doing it in an airport or you create a mall, this is exactly the same thing. So I create the space in which people can go, they find every possible products, and products sellers, they give me part of what they gain because they want to be in the market. So basically, they didn't invent anything. And then at a certain point, we started asking ourselves, yes, but I mean, there are other services that we call platforms, like Google, for example. But Google doesn't really fit this description. It doesn't work this way. So you don't have two different players, two different sites, and they've got a transaction between them. It is somehow different. So you've got still a platform in the middle, but what's happening is that basically you don't have a transaction between the two players, between the two sites. So you got two different transactions between the platform and the customer, so us, using the search engine. And then, of course, the platform can also work in order to sell advertising spaces to somebody else. Advertising was the beginning of everything. At a certain point, we realized that, we realized that we could give services for free to people. Think about social networks, think about the search engines and many others. And the reason why they are free is because actually you are putting all of them together, and once they are together, somebody will be interested in, buying a space to be seen, buying a banner, buying the opportunity to be seen. And once again, what struggles us is that this is not new. So once again, they didn't invent anything. Google, from the business model point of view, Facebook, Instagram, from a business model point of view, they did not invent anything. So the basic newspaper do exactly the same. So when you buy a newspaper, the quantity, there is a mic open. When you buy a newspaper, basically the price you pay for the newspaper is not even enough to cover the expenses for the production of it. Which means that actually the money for Corriere della Sera or New York Times or whatsoever, this money actually comes from people who want to buy an advertising space because they know that a lot of millions of people will read the articles, and so they will see. It's basically the same thing. And this is exactly what you have got with the large majority of social networks, and basically with a large majority of free services. And then we understood another interesting thing, and this was really new. This was really new for platforms in the digital era. So this was something that was not done before. And once again, it's connected with something that Carmelo said at the beginning. You can extract knowledge from your customers. So when you look at a situation like this, you've got this orthogonal kind of platform, so there's not a transaction between the sites. You got another side on top who's leveraging the presence of the others. But what they do, they want to use the side of us using the search engine as a target for advertising. There is also another option, as it seems. So these people, us, we provide data in what we do. We provide insights. We've got knowledge about the usage of things. We've got knowledge about our experience and so on, which means that with a similar architecture, so without having a real transaction between the sides, you can still want to create services to aggregate millions of people. But now the aim is not to use these people as a target for advertising, but as a source for extracting information. And this can be done at various levels. So it can be conscious, so you write your reviews. The moment in which you're writing your reviews, I'm extracting some value out of you, and I will make it available for example, producers and people creating new products and so on. Or it could be also a little bit more unaware. So a super interesting case is the one of Strava. Probably many of you know the case. Strava is this application that is tracking you when you're biking, and they know where people are. And then at a certain point, they understood that knowing where people are, at what time, from where to where they bike, what is the speed, at what time of the day, which day of the week, and stuff like that. It's a valuable information for somebody else. Somebody else could be municipalities. So you can go to the municipalities and say, you want to increase your level of acceptance, you want to increase your popularity, towards people going with bikes. We can help you in telling you where to build new bike lanes, how to change the traffic routes, and stuff like that. So this is a different kind of. Now we don't have time to. We could stay forever, but basically we identified three main architectures when we speak about platforms. There is the typical matchmaking transactional one. Two sites, credit cards, Booking.com, I don't know, eBay. So you got somebody here, somebody there. They want to Tinder. They want to meet, and you okay. Then you got orthogonal ones. Orthogonal ones, in this case, you don't have a real transaction, but you've got like two different services. One for your main customers, and these main customers actually create the value for you. So they are the real source of value, either as a target for advertising or as a source for data and information. And so we started to think about how do you make innovation on platforms now that we identified that we've got different platforms. And there are at least two different ways for doing it. One way is you got a set of actors, and then you understand that you can do more with them. So think about the case of Spotify. In case of Spotify, you got listeners on the one side, and you got artists on the other side. And this is a typical transactional two-sided market. It's a subscription base and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is that at a certain point, Spotify realized that they have an incredible amount of data about how people listen to music and what kind of music they listen to. They are able to say that if you like this song, probably you like the other one as well. They are able to tell the artist that, that song that you produced, the large majority of people stopped listening to it after 32 seconds, exactly when you did this or you didn't do that. So they are creating a certain amount of data that they can embed into a new service that is, again, for artists. So they can help artists in crafting and designing better music, or better, I don't know if it is better music, but music that people will like more. I'm not sure it's better music. This is a long discussion. I wouldn't like to get into it. Or the other option is that, so all of a sudden, you have the two sides, and now you've got also an orthogonal one that is using the data, but the new side is actually played by somebody that was already in the ecosystem. So you just give another service to somebody that was already in your ecosystem. Or there is a second case, that is the typical case of Uber Eats. The case of Uber Eats, it's once again, this is an evolutionary attitude into this. So you got Uber, so you got people who want to have a lift and people with a car, and you create this wonderful system, and then at a certain point you understand that, mainly people want a ride in the morning and in the afternoon, when they go to work, when they need to move for working, and then they need to go back home. Which means that during the day, I've got millions of drivers sitting in the car and waiting to be called. But the number of calls during the day is actually lower. So why don't we use them in another way? The same people who we drove to the office, they will not need a ride until the afternoon, but maybe they will be hungry at a certain point. So why don't we use the same people we had before also to move, instead of moving people, to move food. So I bring you to the office, you are in the office, now you're hungry, and I bring you the food. Which means that I am adding a new player in this case. And the new player are restaurants. So I can start, once you understand the basic structure of platform thinking, you can start, playing like with Lego bricks. You can say, okay, I got a transaction structure. I want to create an orthogonal one with the same players. I got a new player. Where do I put the player? Should I add a new transaction? Should I add a new data trading and stuff like that? So this is how we crafted it. And we came to, at a certain point, we came to understand that was the tipping point. The tipping point was that we worked a lot in order to understand how to innovate the platforms. And then all of a sudden we understood that platforms could be not the object of the innovation, but they could be the driver for innovation. So once you hack the system, you can use the system also to innovate something that is not a platform, that is not a native platform.
Innovation in platforms is not obvious at all. It's not obvious because, well, Marina first showed us numbers that are important. Those percentages of where the platforms are coming from. The vast majority of platforms we know were created as platforms are always the same big names, usually coming from the States. And those few companies actually learned very well how to do innovation in the platform. And Tommaso was actually pointing them out pretty clearly with the various strategies that you can see in the fact that these companies are becoming bigger and bigger. Both of us are not coming from that world. We are not coming from the entrepreneurial world. We are not coming even from the purely digital one. We are not guys that were used to study startups. We come from the innovation management background. We tend to look at established big corporations to help them understanding how to move forward. And what we tried to do over the last years was how to link these two works. What we used to do and what we studied over the previous years. How can we use platforms as a tool for innovation? How can we do innovation through the idea of platform? And we'd like to tell you this story using one of those big names, Amazon. You know, when at the news and the newspapers in the magazines, you read something about platforms. Amazon is always there with Google, Alphabet, Meta, Facebook, Apple. That's definitely one of them. But Amazon wasn't born as a platform. Amazon was born as an amazing, innovative, traditional business. Let me highlight what I mean with traditional. Traditional in the way in which they used to create value. They had a linear value chain. Carmelo talked about the architecture of value early on. And well, their architecture was definitely focusing on something new, which was bringing things at your place in a world in which, well, you usually went out from your place to get things. But the architecture was traditional. They had suppliers, publishers, printing books. They were buying those books, storing them in these huge warehouses, and sending them around the world. How did they do this? How did they move from being a linear value chain? Sorry, there is a request from WebEx, so I cannot change the slides. How can they move from being a linear value chain to actually a platform? Well, their journey has been very long. They took 20 years, to more than 20 years to be where they are now. And they've done innovation through platforms so many times. In the end, they also started doing innovation in the platform because they were a platform. But it actually took them a number of steps before getting there. They started in a way that now it's definitely within our eyes. We don't even realize it. It's somehow what Carmelo was mentioning at the beginning. So this fact that Amazon uses data to bring their products up. Well, in the early days, it was not related to their products. It was related to products, recommendations. They were among the first starting to use data to offer something different. And you know, it was the second part of the 90s. In those days, in the States, there was someone else doing something truly amazing, which was eBay. That was something enabling people to enter an auction. And that's what they've done as well. They've done their first transactional extension. For the first time, they looked for a supply side, replicating basically the model of eBay. And they start learning something new. They start understanding how to be a platform in the way in which we know them today. And as all the great platforms, they prove to be platform thinkers. Companies able to see within that structure the space to enlarge it. And they open Amazon Marketplace, the platform that probably today we think about. Other players there, or better, the same that could be there to sell their product in action, at that point could be there just to sell it without actually betting on the price, but just clicking on the buy button. And there they start growing so much that those data that they were using to recommend you something could be used to decide what to produce. Somehow going back to that linear value chain they had at the beginning, if you wish, but completely data-driven, based on what was being sold on their platform. And we've got all the private labeling that built on top of their platforms. The Amazon Basics is one of the examples. And then they reverse engineering this in the other way around. What if, instead of me being the one that can do what the others are doing on my platform, I can enable anyone else to do what someone is doing in my platform? You know, there were a lot of people, and there are a lot of people selling books on Amazon. Why not anyone can actually do it? And that's what they've done with the Kindle store and the direct publishing. You can publish a book and reach the world without a publisher. And then, this is probably, well, actually, I discovered this while we were writing the book. I didn't know it. But Amazon has a business part as well, a B2B platform, where the customers are not us, but are actually the company that can rely on the same mechanism we use as end users. And then Amazon Prime. You know, movie producers were already there selling their DVDs, not so many anymore, but still they were there. They were there, and why not using their presence to actually enter? Well, sorry, this was the wrong Prime. This was the other Prime. This was the Prime that actually brings you home things very, very quickly. That then brought to the creation of a different kind of convenience service where you can actually rent the time of people to complete task with a mechanical Turk. And then, what I was saying with Prime Video, actually the involvement of the guys selling DVDs and VHS to compete with another platforms coming in the market that was probably Netflix. And you see how in a bunch of years, we went on perceiving Amazon as one of the most innovative companies in the world, even though it's quite old. It's nothing new in the market. And just 2 days ago, it was awarded by BCG, if I remember correctly, as one of the most innovative companies in the world. It's there from 25 years. But still, it's being perceived as one of the most innovative companies. We don't know if that's exactly the reason why this is happening, but we do believe there is a link between these two things. Amazon can foster innovation in a way in which the vast majority of companies out there cannot, using what we call platform thinking as the ability to see platforms as a tool for innovation. And all of us can actually wear those glasses, can actually start seeing within the organizations we work for, within the organizations we are in, the resources, the skills, the assets, the space to foster innovation, creating a platform. And that's what Tommaso and I tried to do over the last 6 months, 1 year. Yeah, 1 year. There is a book forthcoming by the end of the year that is actually titled Platform Thinking. And what we promise to our readers there is to find a way to read the current world, to read the reality around us, to read the companies that made possible to create and capture value for platforms. And we would like our readers to be able to properly see those mechanisms underlying their value architecture, as Carmelo said previously, to start writing similar stories. Maybe for startups, maybe in the digital world, maybe in Europe, as Marina is doing, but also in established firms. Also in the companies that are out there doing an amazing job of creating and capturing value through the lenses and the value architectures that we learn to manage and to exploit over the decades. And one of the things that is presented there is a process that we call the Platform Thinking Toolkit that can help established companies in seeing this untapped value, this idle value, those resources, those competencies, those skills that are there are probably used, not all of them, but usually they are at least partially used, but not fully. And there might be the space to do something more, to actually capture the value that is embedded there. And this is going to be part of what we will be seeing and using, at least partially this afternoon, during the Acceleration Lab, where we will have platforms, or better, people presenting their platforms, and we will together help them in moving forward. And this is also at the center of one of the various programs we are running, which is this Platform Thinking Professionals online certification program that will be delivered at MIP starting from May, where the participants will actually have the chance to use and to follow with us the process of platform thinking, working on their own organization, working on the company they are in, they own, they are working for. They are looking for innovation directions in there. And finally, since we talk about platforms, we tried to build our own platforms linking all the projects together while leveraging the power of the platforms out there. Part of this story, not the entire one, but part of this story is actually available starting from next week on Coursera, totally for free, all over the world. And we hope that you, platform lovers, as we are, may actually help us in spreading it, using Symplatform as a platform. So platform thinking to us means using the platform not only as a model, not only as a shape of the organization that you think is picked in the moment in which you craft your idea into a new firm, but also as a proper tool, as a proper way to see something new in what is already there. And that's what we see behind this hashtag, platform thinking. Thank you.